It started with a knock that didn't sound like a knock at all. It sounded like authority, sharp, confident, the kind of knock that assumes you're already in the wrong. I remember looking at the door and thinking, this is either bad news or something unbelievably stupid. Turns out, it was both. When I opened the door, there were two people standing there with clipboards held tight against their chests like shields. HOA representatives, matching polos, matching expressions, that rehearsed smile that says, we're about to ruin your day, but we're going to enjoy it. One of them didn't even greet me. She just said my name out loud, slow and deliberate, like she was reading a verdict. Then she said the words that still echo in my head. You've been ordered to vacate this property. At first, I honestly laughed. Not because it was funny, but because my brain couldn't process how absurd it was. Evict me? From my own home? The house I bought, paid for, renovated, insured, and paid taxes on? I thought it was some kind of mistake. Wrong address, wrong person, wrong reality. But then she handed me the paper. It was an official-looking notice, HOA letterhead, legal language, deadlines highlighted in yellow, words like non-compliance, unauthorized occupancy, and my favorite, tenant. Tenant! That word flipped a switch in me. I told her calmly that I wasn't a tenant. I was the owner. She smiled wider, like she'd been waiting for that exact line. She said, according to our records, you're not. That's when I knew this wasn't a mistake. This was something else. I asked them to explain. They said the HOA had determined that my property was improperly transferred years ago and that the rightful ownership was under dispute. Until it was resolved, I was to vacate the premises. They spoke in this cold, practiced tone, like they'd done this before, like they expected me to panic, argue, beg. Instead, I asked one simple question. Who do you think owns it? They gave me a name, someone I'd never heard of, a supposed original stakeholder tied to the development. I told them that was impossible. I had a deed. I had closing documents. I had title insurance. I had everything. They didn't care. One of them actually said, you can present that during arbitration. Arbitration? As if I was the problem. They gave me 30 days. After they left, I just stood there staring at the paper. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from anger. There's a special kind of rage that comes when someone tries to erase reality with paperwork. That night, I didn't sleep. I pulled out every document I'd ever saved. Deed, title report, purchase agreement, tax records, emails, everything. I spread them across the dining table like I was building a case against my own life. And that's when I noticed something strange. The deed wasn't just a standard deed. Buried in the language was a clause referencing a development trust, a trust that predated the HOA itself. At the time, I hadn't thought much of it. My lawyer had said it was normal. But now it felt important. So I started digging. I didn't just Google. I went deep. County records, old zoning maps, archived HOA filings. I requested documents most people don't even know exist. And slowly, a picture started to form, one that the HOA clearly hoped no one would ever look at too closely. Turns out, when the neighborhood was first developed, the land was split into phases. Most homeowners bought lots that were transferred directly from the developer to individuals. But my property, mine was different. My lot had been placed into a holding trust due to a financing issue decades ago. That trust never dissolved. It never transferred authority to the HOA, which meant something massive. The HOA never had jurisdiction over my property. Not fines, not rules, not eviction, nothing. But it got better. As I kept digging, I discovered that the person the HOA claimed was the true owner had never owned the property at all. Their name appeared in early drafts, sure, but it was crossed out in finalized documents, replaced by the trust. A trust that, thanks to a later amendment, named me as the sole beneficiary and controller once the property was sold. In other words, I wasn't just the owner. I was the end of the chain. The HOA had either been dangerously incompetent or deliberately lying. So I didn't call them. I didn't email them. I didn't warn them. I hired a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, a property attorney who lived for this kind of thing. When I laid it all out, he went quiet. Then he smiled, that slow, dangerous smile that says someone just messed up badly. He said, "They can't evict you, but you can absolutely destroy them if they try." We waited. Right on schedule, the HOA escalated. Another letter arrived, more aggressive this time. Threats of forced removal, legal action, fees. They CC'd their attorney. That was my cue. My lawyer responded with a single letter, calm, precise, brutal. It included certified copies of the deed, trust documents, county filings, and a legal explanation that basically said, "You have no authority here. You never did, and if you continue, you will be liable for harassment, abuse of process, and damages." We also included something extra, a notice of intent to countersue. Within 48 hours, everything changed. The HOA president called me personally, not emailed, called. His voice was nothing like the confident tone in their letters. It was shaky, careful. He said there had been a misunderstanding. That word again. I told him there was no misunderstanding. There was overreach. He asked if we could talk it out. I told him my lawyer would be present. Suddenly, he didn't want to talk anymore. A week later, the eviction notice was formally withdrawn. No apology, just silence. But I wasn't done. Because when you try to evict someone from their own home, you don't just get to walk away. We filed a complaint, then another, then another. We forced them to acknowledge in writing that my property was not subject to HOA authority. That acknowledgement became public record, and once it was public, other homeowners started asking questions. Turns out I wasn't the only one they'd pushed around. I was just the one who fought back with receipts. By the end of it, the HOA had spent tens of thousands in legal fees. Their board was reshuffled. Their attorney quietly resigned. And my property? It now sits completely outside their reach, permanently. Sometimes I stand in my yard and think about that first knock on the door. How confident they were. How sure they thought they were. They assumed I was just another homeowner who would panic, comply, or move out. They had no idea they were standing in front of the true owner. And that's the lesson here. Paper doesn't equal power. Authority doesn't equal truth. And when someone tells you to leave your own home, the most dangerous thing you can do isn't argue. It's prove them wrong. Because the moment you know more than they do, the entire game flips, and they never see it coming.